We're kind of digging and digging and digging for topics because there is nothing to talk about. Yeah, so I saw this article pop up a few days ago and I kind of had it on the back burner. I was like, you know what, that's an interesting idea. We could discuss that at a later date. Well, it's been about 8 days since this article was published on ProHockeyRumors.com, and I wanted to go out there and read some of this, take a look at some of the ideas, and ask the question as if it really does make sense. So we're talking about the Red Wings and the idea of them buying out one of their more, let's just say, not worth it contracts. Because this article, published by Josh Erickson on July 23rd, talks about how, in his opinion, the Red Wings may consider a Justin Holl buyout next offseason. The article opens up by talking about how other guys around the NHL got bought out at the start of free agency. Cam Atkinson, Adam Boqvist, Campbell, Schmidt, Skinner, Ryan Suter all cut loose from their former teams and they became UFAs. Few would have been surprised, though, if the Detroit Red Wings got their toes into the buying out party too, potentially with a guy like Justin Holl. Holl, 32, landed a 3-year, $10.2 million contract with the Wings in free agency last summer, after operating as a serviceable top-4 option for the Maple Leafs for the previous 4 years. However, the article then talks about the entire downfall of Justin Holl and how Derek Lalonde didn't even really use him as a guy consistently in the lineup, and for $3.4 million, that's not really all too great. He was mostly healthy, but he was scratched for over half of the season, limited to only 38 games. In those games, he recorded 5 assists, a +8 rating, and 22 penalty minutes, while averaging 15.05, his lowest since an 11-game stint in Toronto in 2018-19. Now, okay, pause. Justin Holl was in Toronto since the start of 2018-19? I feel like he's been one of the newer aged guys with that team. Oh my goodness. Okay, no, I guess he was with the Marlies for a long time as well before that, but, Justin Holl, he's a lot older than I thought he was. 32 years old, eh? But he was indeed a guy who played such a limited sample with the Detroit Red Wings, had only 5 points, and for a guy making $3.4 million a year, I mean, this is kind of why he was listed as one of those negatively valued contracts on the Red Wings' dollar efficiency rating on The Athletic. And so when you think about guys that literally just became wastes of contract space, I think Justin Holl is one of those main names. And plus, it's not even like he's really good anyway. I mean, his limited sample wasn't really all too great, he didn't produce any points, and of course, the Justin Holl reputation from Toronto carried over into Detroit big time. It was already seen the moment that contract was signed a year ago as a really big what-the-hell moment for Steve Yzerman. So, to see Holl not even be used by Derek Lalonde and get into this territory where it's like, hey, you're paying $3 million for a guy to sit out half the year, it all of a sudden becomes like, yeah, this guy probably could get bought out. It wouldn't surprise anybody if that was the case. However, he did not get bought out. And this is why I wanted to go out there and read why this article says that is. Detroit entered the summer with ample cap space, but most expected GM Stevie Y to use whatever he had available. New deals are still needed for cornerstone players Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider, while the Wings were also expected to be one of the most active players on the UFA market to propel them to end their 8-year playoff drought. The article then talks about how that didn't really happen, but they did make some signings that did cost some money. Vladimir Tarasenko, Patrick Kane, Cam Talbot, and then they also did trade away Jake Wallman. To that end, though, some were puzzled when Steve Yzerman opted to attach a second-round pick to get rid of Wallman, who was quite effective in his role alongside a Seider and at even strength for the last 2 seasons, instead of upping their cap space by simply buying out Holl. But with 2 years remaining on Justin Holl's contract, a buyout would have translated to a dead cap hit of $1.13 million for the next 4 seasons. That's likely something they didn't want to be on the hook for as they inch towards contention, The Athletic's Max Bultman writes. And so when you think about it now, okay, Justin Holl has 2 years left on his contract. It was 3 years long, signed a year ago. If the Red Wings wanted to buy it out, they would be on the hook for 4 years because a buyout length is determined by the remaining years of the guy's regular contract multiplied out by 2. So if the Wings wanted to buy out Holl today, it would be 4 years long that they'd have his dead cap. If they bought him out next year, it would only be 2 years long that they would have the cap space on for. And if you add it on to the 24-25 season wherein he still is under contract, then you would be saving an extra year by buying him out next year rather than this year. It's very small, the differences have to be there, but I do think you have to consider the implications as to what an extra $1 million or so can do for your team, because it certainly isn't insignificant. Heck, the article even gives Holl the benefit of the doubt here, saying that with Jake Wallman out of the picture and more pressure on youngsters like Simon Edvinsson to take on minutes this season, Holl could find himself relied upon a bit more as an insurance policy. Max Boltman from The Athletic doesn't get the sense from Yzerman that he thinks Holl is a lost cause, at least for now. After all, he did sign the guy to a multi-year, 8-figure contract just 12 months ago. But the article then concludes here at the bottom that if everything is the same with Holl for next year, if he does not progress forward, if he's still underutilized, if Derek Lalonde doesn't trust him, then the Wings may have no choice but to go out there and utilize that buyout window on Justin Holl's deal. Doing so, buying out his contract next year, would open up over $2 million for the Wings in free agency in 2025. They would have locked up their entire core long-term after the Raymond Insider deals eventually come across the finish lines this summer. No true core players are up for new deals in 2025, and they'll also have goalie Ville Husso's albatross $4.75 million cap hit and $5.3 million of Olli Maatta and Jeff Petrie coming off the books as well. So if the Wings timed everything right, if they bought out Justin Holl next year and they did not bring back Petrie, they didn't bring back Maatta, they didn't re-sign Ville Husso, or maybe they do re-sign those guys, but just not to the dollar amounts that they're at right now, there could be some really good options for the Wings to explore monetarily in the 2025 offseason. This is all, of course, just assuming the worst happens and a lot of these players don't really improve. I mean, if Ville Husso, for example, has a monster year and he's so good and he outduels Cam Talbot for the starter spot or whatever, then okay, re-sign him to whatever he wants. But assuming a lot of these guys don't really get better, this is kind of an okay way to think about it, right? This is going to be a season upcoming anyway, where if the Detroit Red Wings make the playoffs just barely, it would be seen as a win. I don't want to make it seem like losing and not making the playoffs would be seen as okay, but they're kind of in that stage right now. They're competitive. They're making things exciting, they're making things interesting, but a playoff run would more so serve as experience rather than an honest shot at winning the Stanley Cup in 2025. So, if everything works out well, the Wings buy out Holl next year, they get some extra cap space freed up, and they let some of their other guys go to free agency, then there could be some interesting spending potential. If a lot of the Wings end up growing in 2024-2025, then maybe Patrick Kane comes back again. He signs yet another deal. Tarasenko is still going to be in Detroit, and everything looks even better in 2025-2026. That's just kind of how things were supposed to go, right? Steve Yzerman didn't turn around the Tampa Bay Lightning immediately. I mean, he had to get a lot of those guys drafted, but eventually things worked out. So 3 cheers to the Yzer plan, 3 cheers for a Justin Holl buyout. If he becomes, actually good this upcoming season, then you can disregard this video, but I don't think that's actually going to happen. Yeah, it's not really looking all too great for Holl, especially with the Derek Lalonde scratching the entire season, but either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the idea of him getting bought out. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.